Hello, everybody. Hang on just a minute. I got a little bit of a tech business here. Not much, but a little bit. I see I locked Jonathan. So I'll have to see who else I have locked out. Accidentally, of course. And let's see. There's Jonathan. Okay. Hey, Jonathan, I'm sorry I had you locked out there, pal. It was completely unintentional. And let's see if there's anybody else that's dropping me a little a note to that effect. I don't see anybody yet. If somebody could remember to have me check in 3 or 4 minutes, that would be great. Let's see who. A couple of people wrote in today, letting us know they wouldn't be here. One of them was Joyce, let me know that she would not be here, and Andrew McFarland. Joyce will be back next week. Andrew might not be back for 2 weeks. He's on vacation with his family, and we're going to miss him. We'll miss them all, but we are we're pleased. I'm very, very pleased to have those of you who are with us, and because you're the ones who are supposed to be here. If anybody else was here, it'd be too many of us. All right. Whoops. There we go. So let me first say, we got several new people with us today, either with us or there's. Is it Alvaro? Is that correct?
Hi, Fred. It's Alvaro.
Say it again, please.
Alvaro.
Alvaro. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
If I get that wrong, you'll just have to forgive me. Otherwise, you'll be copping a resentment. I never stay.
No, I have a weird name, so don't worry. No worry.
No, I bet you have a very unweird name for Colombia, South America. So Alvaro. Is that right?
Yes.
Wow. Correct. So Alvaro, South America. Woke up in the last few days, really maybe last week, from one of my videos, which I'm pleased to announce and welcome you home, Alvaro.
Thank you.
And Alvaro, and then Carrie Flocky joins us again, and Carrie and I had an awakening session the other day, and I'm hoping that conscious awakeness is still peeking through those eyes, and here and there. All right. So, and let's see who else is with us. Oh, Christine, you're back from China. Very good. Welcome. Glad to have you back with us, dear. Hope all that went well. And I think there's some, oh, yes. And is it, so is it EJ Levine?
Yes.
Okay. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
And of course, the regular group of suspects here. So let me go around and say hello to them. So Mike Zerbel, hello, and I think you have the okay to record if you haven't yet done so. For once, I'm actually on top of it. I think I actually have everyone muted, and so Carrie again. Excuse me.
The two new people are muted.
I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry. You need to go ahead.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So let me get to that. And okay, I got everybody muted. Thank you, Chris. And Vince, good to see you. I see you've been doing some writing for the forum, which I'm pleased about. And hello, Barbara. How are you this morning, dear? Always good to see your shining face. Julie, it's wonderful to see you. And Oneness, how are you, sir? Good to see you. Yes, excellent. Conscious Awakeness speaks from England. Robin in Denmark, how are you, sir? Excellent. Good to see you. David, a pleasure, sir. Yeah, good to see you. And Kelly in Switzerland, how are things there, dear? And just for those of you who don't know, Julie is also in England. And Harvey is in the U.S. Hey, Harvey, how are you? And Christine again, so pleased to have you. Huxley in California. Jonathan, where are you? I forget. I'm not hearing you, Jonathan. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Virginia.
Virginia. Oh, that's right. Yes. That's right. I remember now. So you're glad to have some non-dual teacher that doesn't have an accent.
Exactly.
So Kathleen, how are you, dear? Thank you so much for your help. Good article. Thank you. Best title of an article that I probably ever saw. That's just wonderful. And Chris, it's a pleasure to see you, sir. Thank you for your help. I'm going to call on you in just a minute. Carter, how are you? Very good to see you. And Lucas, it's nice to have you back. Yeah, we missed you last week. And Joel, a pleasure as always. Thank you so very much, sir. Max, hey, how are you? Good. It's a joy to have you. And there's Kim. Hey, Kim, how are you, dear? Yeah, good to see you. Oh, excellent. Excellent. Now, see, you've got one big dog still healthy there. I hope the little one is doing okay. We got the big one. Okay. That's good. And and there, whoops, John just came in and changed places with you, Kim. Hey, John, good to see you. And then EJ. And EJ, where are you located? I'll unmute you long enough for you to tell us where you, what part of the country you're in, or what part of the world. Okay, we'll live in mystery. So, and Eric, how are you? I guess you're fine. So, Chris, if you would please, since we got some new people, just go through the mechanics of how this little room works, please.
Okay. If you look at your screen, you can either be in the gallery or the speaker mode. And the speaker mode, you'll have a big picture in the middle with who's ever talking. That's also a good hint as to whether your mute or your mic is on. If you go down to the bottom of your screen on the left-hand side, the extreme left-hand side, you can see a button that says mute. You want to click on that to keep your mic muted. And when you're talking, you can unclick it. It's probably a good idea, even when you're the main person talking to Fred, to mute yourself. But definitely when you're not talking, put that mute on, so otherwise the sound quality can suffer. Next to that, on the left-hand side, the second button over, you can see a stop video. It's nice to see your face. It's great. It's really helpful, I think, in the Satsang. But if you're doing something you don't want people to see or need to check out, you can hit that stop video button. If you continue along the bottom, probably the key then is that participants button. Now, if you hit that, another window will open up on the right-hand side, and that you can see everybody else. And very importantly, at the bottom of that, there's a raise hand. So if you want to speak when you come to the question portion, you want to hit that raise hand button, and that way Fred can see you. And then if you can unraise your hand. It'll be the same. It'll switch to unraise when your hand is raised and when you're called upon. So it's good. Watch out for me and my crazed anti-mute stuff, but that's not super important. The most important thing is that you are able to participate and get as much as you can out of it. Thank you. Thank you
very much. We also had we have a second page today because there's more than 25 of us, and there's a bit of bouncing back and forth. But I see that Connie is with us. Thank you, Connie. Pleasure as always, dear. And Mira, my love, you're here as well. Good to have you with us.
I might miss the last half hour, but it's better than missing all of it. So
that's right. And we'll celebrate while you're here, and we'll weep when you're gone, but we'll all make it anyway. So glad to have you. And Eric, it's a pleasure to see you, sir. Over there in Indiana, but you're probably not in Indiana. You are in South Dakota right now, I think. Anyway, so and it looks like you are frozen, which is another low bandwidth issue. That's fine. So if you notice that it appears that my bandwidth is okay because I've got everybody on. So if you should happen to lose me though, holler. If you lose the video, holler, and I'll click my thing on and off so that we can again bring me back into focus. So I guess we're going to go in. There's Eric actually moving around now. We've got some bandwidth. Hey, just 1 second. I want to check again and make sure I don't have anybody else locked out. And if I do, they're keeping mum about it because I don't see anything. And just one moment, and then we're going to take a minute to sort of check in with each other. But one thing I want to look at first. Okay. So, since we've got this many, let's just take 1 minute. But let's take 1 minute, please. There are a lot of things about us that are different, but we also have one very strong commonality, and that is the sense of being. So let's all please just take a minute to notice the sense of being, that thing that we not only have in common, but that thing that actually is us. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and launch into something. Before I launch into something, I never do this, but I just can't not do it. I just loved it so much that Betsy told me about a scene in a movie that she saw this morning, and it was two gangsters, and one of the gangsters was pouring the concrete around the other gangster's feet, and so the gangster that was that was getting his feet done said, if our positions were reversed, I wouldn't be doing this to you. And the first gangster said, yes, but that's in the abstract, and this is concrete. So we're going to be talking about concrete things today. What I was actually thinking about, and we'll touch on this and see if it carries a spark. And I know that pretty much all of you know better, but let's discuss what it might mean for us. And that's the idea that comes through us through Eastern teachings, and actually through Western mystical teachings as well, is that our number one job was supposed to be renouncing the world, or is supposed to be renouncing the world. And in theory, we were supposed to do that in order to wake up, and then in theory, we're supposed to do that in order to stay awake. And I notice that that's not actually the case, but there is something that we do want to touch base on, is that the renouncing of the world is that's part of culture. It's part of tradition, and it's the part of the spiritual tradition. And it comes, and I think it comes from an early understanding, which is that it's pretty easy to notice worldly distractions. And the quickest solution to that is to remove them. But what I notice is that if I renounce the world for even a couple of days, and I haven't done this in quite a while, but when I used to renounce the world and go camping, that it was actually a pretty crowded little camping space because I took all of you with me. And and I had my wars with you outdoors. That was the big difference, is that I now had a war that was outdoors instead of a war that was indoors. It was, Byron Katie discovered that much the same thing after she woke up, and she discovered the same thing I discovered, which was that that she was inhabiting a crazy person. And so she took her crazy person to the desert to do inquiry in order to help wake her up, or actually to help clear her up. I think she could not have been much more awake if she'd been sitting on dynamite. So I think she was very, very awake, but not all that clear. So clear meaning that there's a certain understanding and the beginning of a certain maturity, which is that maybe this is not actually about the unit's experience. Maybe it's not actually all about how the unit feels and the way the unit feels and the experiences the unit should be having and all of that. Instead, it is we can actually, if you will, renounce experience. We don't need to renounce the world, but we're all in the world. We all look like we have fairly comfortable little spots in the world. Having been homeless numerous times in my life, I can tell you I'm not giving this up easily. So I have already renounced the world 9 times. I'm not going to do it a 10th. And at least I don't plan on doing it, but I don't know that I planned on doing any of the others either. But it's been a nice run in between homeless conditions. So I'm hoping this will stick. And so we can renounce our attachment to experience rather than craving additional experiences. More experiences, bigger and better experiences, higher and faster and cooler experiences. The easiest way that I know to halt all spiritual progress in a heartbeat is to resist this present moment. And every time that there's a sense of oscillation for those of you who are experiencing oscillation, you can know that it always comes back to one thing. There's only one thing that causes that, and that is the resistance to this arising, resistance to the content of this arising. And it may be tragedy, or it can actually be in the midst of ecstasy, where there is the noticing that this will never last. And so I start missing it before it's gone. And it can show up in different ways, but it's always going to be resistance to the present moment. I should be clearer than this. I should be awake, and I'm not. And if I was really awake, I wouldn't be acting like this. If gee whiz, I'm still honking the horns at people, and I shouldn't be doing that. And we can all agree that that would not be a skillful action, unless you're fixing to have a wreck, at which point probably a very skillful action. But just doing it at random, I don't think we'd vote for that. But we notice that it's happening until it doesn't. So we can renounce our contrary opinions. Contrary to what? Contrary to reality. That's what's happening. You see, there actually is nothing beyond reality. And I know most of you know this anyway, maybe all of you know it, but there's nothing contrary to reality. There's no contrast to reality. There's no comparison to reality. There's no alternative to reality. There's just this. And when I decide that this isn't good enough, then what happens is that I've now reverted to dreaming. Conscious awakeness will have at that point gone unconscious. You'll remember a few weeks back I told you about that experience where I had a thought come in when I was in the line at McDonald's that I'm just going to crack up. And then it was just pure resistance to the present moment. And not only that, but it was guilty of another thing too, which was I was stacking all of the apparently previous moments onto this one. So that this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened, and none of them should have happened because I know better than that. But actually, I noticed that I didn't know better than that. I just like to think I know better than that, but obviously I didn't know better than that. So that stacking of events, that's something that we can renounce that. Where it's because, if you look, like if you've been married for a while, perhaps you might have noticed that there's once in a while there's a little bit of a tiff in the house. I have to say there's never much of one here, but I can remember other marriages where there were. I can't even remember this one prior to waking up where there was much in the way of that. But I can remember it in other marriages. And when it would come up, it would always, well, you always do that. Right? And it's adding this offense and that offense and that offense and that offense. And you never knew that anybody was taking note of that and keeping count. But they were. And we do that with ourselves. So forget worrying about doing it with your mate. Your mate will recover, but you may not. So try to renounce that. The sense of separation that we experience. We notice that there's always some sense of separation because there's a sense that there's a Fred here. We've not found one, but there's a sense that there's a Fred here. There's a sense that I'm here and you're there. And let me just go check, make sure I don't have anybody locked out. Let me just, right. Yeah, I do have somebody locked out. Here we go. And, and please join us. Okay. So that should get Allison with us. Hopefully that'll be the last one. I had a bunch of new people this week and I tried to do the best I could on getting everybody on the list, but I noticed I didn't get everybody on the list because I locked a couple of you out. I'll try to make amends for that. So there's always some sense of separation, and it's even now there could, I don't know that I actually have, I'm trying to tell you that there's a sense of separation here now, but actually when I look, I can't find one. So, but I can remember many as the time that I have felt that. And there's certainly, the perception-wise, there's a sense of separation here now because my mind is still in the same habit that it was in for the first 50 years, which is that I'm still thinking that space is the thing that my mind is still believing that space is the thing that's dividing us from everything else, instead of realizing that space is the thing that's joining everything to everything else. And when I begin to believe that when I begin to privilege objects over space, when I begin to think that what this is really all about is objects and not the space, then I will experience a sense of separation because I'll get a sense of distance between me and other objects. And it will be so compelling that it will be pretty much irresistible. Hello, Allison. Sorry I had you locked out. I also had Jonathan locked out. It's notice, terrible to say it, but I noticed that was the way it was supposed to be until now when you're with us. And we're glad to have you with us. You weren't supposed to be here at the beginning, but we're delighted to have you here now. And that's sort of just a way of me covering for Fred. So this sense of separation is that I can renounce the lie of that. I may still experience separation, or the sense of separation. But if I've decided to renounce experience, then I'm not privileging my thinking over my experience. Kelly, I can just see the top of your head, love, and thank you very much. So Betsy, close that door, please.
Doing it.
Thank you. Little background competition. And so if I renounce experience as being what's primary, then even though my experience is that, gee whiz, there's a me here and a you there and a world in between us and all of that, even though that can be maybe my experience until it's not, then, and it's always going to be there to some degree. My eyes are never going to learn non-duality. I mean, they're just not going to get it, right? So they're always going to see things in a particular way. But the mind overrules much of that because I no longer experience that, but that's because of time and grade, because I've been doing this a long time. Conscious awakeness has been flowing through this body for a long time. And that will also happen with you, providing you pursue this and continue to clear. As I'm really, really pleased to see some new people here, because you are the ones who will clear. You have all the people I meet with. The ones who will clear will be the people that pursue it afterwards. Because there's always there's the desire to graduate, to claim this and say, I got it, thank you very much, I'm done. And what I want to tell you, if it was that easy, I'd be unemployed. So it works to my advantage, and sadly to your disadvantage, but pursuing it is the only answer I know for that. So we can renounce separation. We can also, what's the other thing that we're just habitually addicted to? And we've mentioned it earlier, but it's thought. Is that I'm just addicted to thought, right? That's what we all are. We're just, because we're constantly responding to shit that's not happening. Pardon me. That's the truth, is we're constantly reacting to stuff that's not occurring. It's occurring here, but it's not occurring in the world. And it's happening here, but not in the room with me. You know, that if you look at your situation right now, if you really look at just where you are right this moment, I don't think you're going to be able to find much in the way of a problem. I just don't think so. I can tell you that in the absence of a Fred, and we're not taking one out of this picture, we're just not putting one in the picture where there's not one already. In the absence of Fred, I have no experience of a problem. I have in the absence of a Fred, I notice that thoughts still arise, but that I don't cling to them. I don't grasp them. And I don't privilege my thoughts over experience. I don't overcome my direct experience with my indirect thinking. We're back to that abstract and concrete. See, so it's because always in my life, I have used this abstract thought to overcome the concreteness of this moment, because I never paid any attention to this moment. I was really only paying attention to what I thought about this moment, which I knew was far more important than this old moment. You know, it's this moment's supposed to serve Fred, and if it's not serving Fred, it's screwed up. And it's just that's the way I really did see it, and that story is still available to me today. So these are things that we can renounce instead of renouncing the world. I can remember that both Nisargadatta and Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj and Ramana Maharshi, both of them both had devotees who would ask about going to live in the jungle, and Nisargadatta would tell them, why do you need to do that? I mean, that wouldn't be good for your family, and it wouldn't enhance your spirituality. You just go out there and find out you had taken your mind with you, so you wouldn't actually be alone at all. And Ramana would say, there's no need to do that. Just find out who it is that wants to go to the jungle, and that will nip that in the bud. I say that same thing. Is that this is the 21st century. We are living in the West. I think everybody that is here and everybody that will be hearing this actually is in the West. We have been deeply influenced and are deeply grateful for our Eastern teachings and traditions, and we respect those. But they're not ours. This non-duality that we're doing, it just can't be an Eastern thing. We just can't hang it onto an Eastern peg. I study a little bit of Western philosophy, and I go back and I find non-duality there too. It's just that it's a little bit different. It's not quite out front the way that Eastern is, but it's there, and it's not this thing that we're doing is not a Western thing either. It's not Western or Eastern. It's not male or female. There's no opposite to it. It's non-duality says it is exactly what it says it is, all inclusive. So this is just what we're doing. And we don't have to abide by any traditions or any formulas or any set of actions or what do they call it in the Catholic Church? Starts with, I can't remember. Any rate, it doesn't make any difference. Whatever the rituals and everything are, is that we don't have to go by any of that if they don't feel authentic to us. It doesn't make any difference what they feel like to anybody else. If they feel authentic to us, let's pay attention to them. If they don't, let's get rid of them and not even go there. So let us now take some questions. No one has put up a hand yet, so I'm waiting, and I'd be glad to. Okay, Alvaro.
Yes, you get it right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Appreciate the confirmation. So, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Fred. Thank you. Very glad to be here.
Oh, I'm very, very glad to have you here. I really am. There's Ian. Ian is also Ian is either in England or the Philippines. I don't know which. He bats back and forth. Good to see you, Ian. So, Alvaro, welcome to Satsang. Delighted to have you with us. Delighted to have had email with you in the last little while. You have a question that I can help you with.
Yes, Fred. You were telling us about not resisting the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important. It's crucial for clearing.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is a very specific one. Is how about if a panic or fear or something like that arises? How to not resist that? How to kind of live with that?
Okay, so I can only tell you the way that what has happened here, what I've done, and what's worked for me. It doesn't mean that it will work for you. It doesn't mean that you don't need something else. I can give you a surefire recipe for Fred,
mm-hmm.
Which is one that I got from another teacher a long time ago. And that is, in the midst of a panic attack, you're probably not going to have the clarity of mind to do anything but freak out. And so, you know what I say there? Freak out. Just go ahead and just let it through. And because it's going to happen anyway. But as soon as there is enough presence of mind, in other words, when conscious awakeness begins to notice that it's freaking out and that conscious awakeness never, ever has to freak out, because this is the key. Whoever it is that's freaking out is always the character. Conscious awakeness will never, ever, ever freak out. So there's when it feels like that is happening, that will be identification with, that will be the unit, identification with the character or the unit character, however we want to put it, versus conscious awakeness. But when there's total identification, there's no awareness of conscious awakeness. There's no, I've lost conscious awareness. It's not coming through me anymore. Because it'll be just like there never was, like you've never heard that phrase. There's just, and so we don't want to resist that fear.
Okay.
So, and we wouldn't know how to anyway. In other words, we can't sit down and calculate how will I resist that fear, because in panic you won't. So just have at it. But as soon as there's enough conscious awakeness there to recognize that it's freaking out unnecessarily, then what I do, and this is extraordinary. I'll tell you a quick story about it that most everybody here's heard probably more than once, but it would be a good one to share. And that is that you just simply, you relax to the best of your ability. And when at that time for me, I was so frightened and so freaked out, and this was 24/7. This was not any particular moment. Just my life, I was just so incredibly fearful. This was years ago. I was afraid I was going to go to prison or something, that Betsy and I were going to be separated. And it was just, we were trying to surrender to what had not yet happened, which is impossible. But we had to try to discover it. So when I relaxed, it was relaxed, like almost physically shaking. I'm sure that there was some probably trembling. But rather than resist that, which is what I always did, which was try to push that to the back of my mind, try to get busy so I wouldn't think about it, try to change my focus on what I was thinking about. All of those things may be effective for just a moment, but they're not letting that through. And if you're not letting that bubble to the surface, there's no way for it to burst. So we have to allow these things to come through. They're not, we have to let them come through, which means that I just relax, and instead of resisting that fear, I just let it take me. And this is not easy, but it is absolutely doable, and it's not as hard as the mind makes it out to be. And the first thing that you do is that when you let this overtake you is notice that it's not fatal, because your mind is telling you that this is fatal, that this is your extinction coming up, right? It's right here. And you instead just notice that it doesn't kill you. The second thing would be to notice that if you absolutely had to, could you live the rest of your life like that? And I tell you that I was in absolute hell, but when I really looked at it from that standpoint, I went, well, yeah, I wouldn't want to, but I noticed I've been doing it for a year, and so I probably could do it forever, and that it's not all black, right? That even with this fear, it comes and goes, it gets better, it gets worse, but it's not stagnant. And I could do this as long as it was required. Because what we do is we always say, oh, I can't take any more of this, and then we do. Because that's just the way I was. Like, I can't do take any more of this. This is like instruction to God to lay off. And most of the time that won't happen. Because the universe doesn't really have its ear to my mouth to hear all the whispers and directions that I'm clamoring to give it. Let it just come through. Notice it's not fatal. Notice that you could stand it longer if you needed to. If you had to, you could stand it. You may be able to notice that I did, that I could actually stand it forever. Then you realize that it's not, that whatever it is that's going on, it's not as big as you're making it. You see this? It's just that you're blowing it up, and because what happens is it's not about this fear. It's about the fact that this fear is going to go on forever. It's going to wreck my life. I'm just like I always knew, I'm going to end up pushing a shopping cart through alleys, and right, that's just I can't tell you how many people have told me that they feel like that's their secret destiny, is just to be out there. Well, I mean, I've been out there, but hell, I always made it to, I mean, nobody ever put me out there other than Fred, right? So allow it to come through and see what happens. Let me tell you the quick story. That one time I had a woman, this was like 4 years ago or something, quite a while, but I had a woman in England, and she was in her 80s, and she had been ill, and she was depressed, and her family just bought her, like we say in America with football, it was a Hail Mary pass, right? Just the last straw, the last attempt to do something. And so they bought her a session with me in the off chance that this fraud might actually be able to help her. And so I spoke with her, and it turned out that she was a lifelong seeker, and that, but she had, of course, not discovered her true nature. She was in her 80s. She knew she was fixing that she wouldn't be with the earth for so long, right? I mean, my father-in-law is 98, but we do look at that as being slightly unusual. And so when I started talking to her, she actually opened up beautifully. She was hearing everything I said. I mean, I really thought I was going to have to go 1, 2, 3, A, B, C with this quote old lady. And instead, she could hear everything I was saying. She was just doing beautifully. And then all of a sudden, she wasn't doing beautifully. She started going, because I actually had her do that same exercise that I just related to you. I had her do that exact same exercise to help overcome her fears, and that she was constantly suffering from. And she said, no, Fred, I can't. That's right. I asked her to just start the relaxing, start letting it take her over. No, I can't. And I was saying, well, just try it. And she said, oh, I can't do it. My heart. And she closed her eyes and went back like that. And I thought, oh my God, I've killed her. Right. It was like, I just couldn't my mind immediately went to, can this be traced? Are they going to be able to find out who it was that was on Skype with her when she died? And is there any way that I can take that off or get rid of that tape? And this is all taken 2 seconds. and through my mouth, to my utter astonishment and horror, came the words that came out of my mouth were, well, just try. Let it take you over, and let's see if you have a heart attack. That's what I said. See if you have a heart attack. And she actually took my word for it, and she got very quiet. Her body was physically shaking the way I described it. Mine probably was when I was in Terra 2. She was physically shaking like this, but she closed her eyes. This woman really wanted to wake up, and she closed her eyes and she just let the fear take her, and she could just see it. I just was waiting for her to fall out of the chair. And then the shaking grew less, and then it grew less, and then there was no shaking. Then the face relaxed. She began to look much calmer, and she opened her eyes and she looked at me and she said, well, I can't hide there anymore, can I? And within, I don't know, the drama would say at that moment, but probably it was certainly within the next few minutes, she did wake up. Okay. That was the thing, was that she was willing to, there was a faith in that, which I talked about in the video that I cut yesterday. If you haven't seen it, you might want to take a look at it. I've actually put up 2 new videos yesterday. One from my house and one from a satsang I did in May with another organization. And there was a faith that she had faith in me that she would try it. She had faith in the teaching that I wouldn't lead her astray. She actually did the work, which was to stop and just allow herself to be terrified. And then she noticed that there was nothing that could actually terrify her, because it just conscious awakeness began to peek through. And if there's anything conscious awakeness is not familiar with, it's terror. So there's my long answer to your pretty short question. Anything
Thank you.
else?
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You.
And I think it was, yes, Joel. Hey, Joel, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, Fred.
Fine.
A couple thoughts and a question. While you were talking, I started laughing at myself. You know, the thing about resisting the present moment, which I spent most of my life doing. And there's such a realization that, you know, all that was just an illusion, you know, as though I had a choice, you know, as though, you know, it's kind of like, you know, what do you think of reality, Joe? I vote no, you know.
Yeah, right.
You know, it was absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And this turns all of that on its head. I have a T-shirt I've had for years. I used to wear it. It says, no resistance, no judgment, no attachment, spiritual in nature. And, you know, I used to wear that to kind of remind, it's the Joel character wearing that, because the Joel character is trying not to resist,
Yeah.
not, you know, not to accept and all of that. And again, this, you know, it turns all of that on its head, because everything is spiritual in nature. There is no Joel to resist, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my question is, you said once to me that, you know, in dropping the identification with the character, that it's like oneness has Joel-free moments.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, so for you, what is a Fred-free moment? Is that something that only occurs really when you're meditating and you shift and let go of language, or are in fact you able to play out here in the, you know, satsang is like playing in the playground of the relative, but at the same time, so to do this, do you have to, on some level, become or identify with the Fred character, or are you just kind of always aware that it still is a Fred-free moment? It's just oneness playing through Fred as you do this. What's a Fred-free moment for you?
So, well,
What's oneness having a Fred-free moment look like?
This is oneness having a Fred-free moment, right?
That's what I thought.
So,
and that's confirming to me, because as I go through life these days, it feels like, you know, there are long periods of a sense of freedom from, you know, the Joel character, that it's all just, you know, living through this character, through this body, even when I'm not thinking about it. It's like, it's just the truth. It's just the given. So that's helpful.
Joel, if you think about my sense of being meditation,
yeah,
then what is that? That is, I mean, because what I'm suggesting that people do is nothing.
Right.
Is right? Is just sit there, notice the sense of being, but don't actually do anything.
But are you, when you do that, and you did it today, my thought was, well, is he saying, you know, get into the Joel character and notice Joel's sense of being. That no. Joel has a sense of being.
No.
Right.
Because we're not trying to get, we don't know that, we're not trying to get a Joel to meditate. When I am doing if I am doing the sense of being meditation, which actually I am doing almost all the time, right? Just the way that it happens. It's not I'm doing it, it's just what I am. When I recommend that somebody do the sense of being meditation, then what I'm suggesting they do is practice being themselves. And I mean that quite literally, with like a capital T, to practice being themselves. Because what I am is this.
Right. It's
This
more
is not other than me. This is not other than me. I'm not limited to even this. Not only am I not limited to one of these, but I'm not limited to this either.
it's a sense of my true nature meditation.
So it is true nature.
Yeah.
That's
the real.
That's right.
Okay.
There's an ego that meditates,
Right.
and it's doing its very best to meditate its way out of itself.
Right.
But that's going to be pretty difficult to do. But it's what we do until we don't do it, because it's the only thing that we can do. What we do here is that we understand the absolute view, but we refer to the practical, which is that we use the unit. It's the only tool we have is the unit, and we use the unit to go beyond the unit. We use the mind to go beyond the mind. We use language to go beyond language. These are the tools we have. None of them are adequate for bringing about spiritual awakening, but all of them are like cultivating and watering the soil so that the seeds of spiritual awakeness can grow, break through the ground and break through the hard ground, and then flourish. It's just the same way, when we look about the clearing thing, which you've been so very good at and at pursuing. When we look at that, then it's the same thing that when we have a plant that we're growing, that we're trying to bring about the growth and nurture, and we're nurturing a seedling, is that once it breaks ground, we don't say, well, thank God I was a success, and then leave it the hell alone. We still will go back and we'll water it and we'll weed it and and that's exactly what we're doing with clearing, is we're going back and we're watering and weeding the stuff that grows up onto the pureness of this, right? Because this is like a window, but stuff grows on the window, stuff fogs the window gets dirty from this. We're constantly, each one of these is a window washing session. Every one of these satsang is a window washing session. Every private session that I do, it's a window washing session, because we're always moving forward or we're moving backward, but we're never standing still. So we are cleaning that window. We're in the process of cleaning the window, or we're in the process of fogging the window. One of the two. We're just breathing and fogging the window. So it's which one do I want to do? The fogging will come about unconsciously. You don't need to spend time wondering about how you're going to fog the window. That's just the way that we live. So the unfogging, therefore, has to be conscious. And when I say conscious here, what I'm saying is that consciousness itself has to be willing to be alert. And it will feel like I, Fred, am willing to be alert, or I, Fred, am feeling kind of lazy. I don't feel like it right now, so I'm just going to get on this train going in the other direction. I think I'm stopping at a station, and I'm going to rest on my laurels here for a while and then move forward some more. But the moment that I rest on my laurels, I've actually taken a train in the other direction. So that when clarity begins to return, I'm going to have to catch yet another train back to that station before I can even start to go further than where I was. So it's
like borrowing from the old recovery phrase, clearing is walking up the down escalator.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So you can do it, but you got to keep moving. And what I notice is that, and sadly, it's people sometimes with the clearest awakenings that will see it and go, oh, finally I got it. Well, by the time they say I got it, they've already lost it. Right? Because there's no one there to have it.
That's right.
There's just, in the same way of that washing the window, there's getting it. And there's nothing but getting it. There's no got it for anybody. I don't have it. We talk about getting it. I don't even know what the hell it is. I don't have it. I know that. But what I can tell you is that I'm getting it in the sense that I'm awake to this arising right now. That's my experience, and that's the only experience. that I can ever report in terms of, because there's just no one here to be permanently awake. It just doesn't work like that.
I was experiencing when Alvaro talked about when crisis comes, resisting the present moment, that when in not being identified with the character, then the resistance dissipates, it vanishes. It doesn't make all the feelings are still there. Sometimes the fear, sometimes the pain, sometimes the whatever, but I don't know how to describe it, but without the resistance of the character, therein lies, kind of like you say, the lightness. Life comes lighter because you go through it. The character goes through it, and I'm aware of the character goes through it, but I'm also aware of who I really am, my nature, and it's not the same. It allows itself to go through it in some way.
I had
oneness going. It's Joel's not in crisis. Oneness is having crisis through.
It's just happening.
It's just happening.
And there's no Joel in crisis unless there's a Joel.
That's right.
And I'm the only one that can invent one that I'm going to experience.
Right.
I have got my Joel that I experience, but it may not have anything to do with your Joel, right? Because there's no objective Joel out there,
right,
that we will all experience. There's enough of an agreement,
right?
We have enough of an agreement that we can operate, but there's no objective anything out there.
And in fact, there's no crisis. There's no problems. There's just other arisings, other situations.
That's right. Because
all the same. It's all in one thing.
That's it. It's just one thing. There's not the bad part,
right?
The good part. That's like, and what we want is we just want the good part.
That's right. All my life.
Yeah, me too.
So the Joel character has to label, this is bad, this is good, this is rather than.
And you could say it, but when we say that, what we're not even saying the whole thing, because this is bad for Joel, this is good for Joel, because that's how we measure these things. Is this good for Joel or not? Right? Is this, we just had a tsunami. Well, Joel wasn't there, so okay, how big a deal can it be?
Right.
So it's right. I mean, that's the interpretation that we'll project onto these things. We spend all of our time looking for clarity instead of recognizing that we are always looking from clarity.
Right. In fact, the great measure of what's bad and what's good, the barometer of the universe of even whether God is good, was always what? My feelings.
Yeah, that's right.
It feels bad, it's bad, it feels good.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
and
the character's the same.
Yes, right. I mean, that's it. So when I turn my world over to the character's experience, when I turn my world over to being where I want it to be a reflection of the character's wishes, I am just turning my life over to a crazy man, right? And then saying and straighten up and fly right this time, right? If it can't, it knows nothing about straightening up or flying right. It's a Fred, and it's the antithesis of those things in its makeup. So this is what we call, again, and it's the same thing we had to do in sobriety in order to get sober, Joel, which is that we had to get honest, and we just have to tell ourselves that these are the facts. One of my sponsors in AA told me, he said, so Fred, if I tossed a tennis ball into the crowd, whoever caught it could run your life better than you do. And he was absolutely right. And it's so I don't want to go back to turning my life over to that crazy man, because there is still the experience of a Fred life here. So let's talk about that. Let me back up just a little bit on the Fred free moment. There is it really every month when there's not a Fred free moment. That's what I report on. When I was in that McDonald's, there was a Fred present moment.
Right.
And I told you about last week, I think, when I was shaving and a thought came out and said there's something wrong. That was a Fred present millisecond, but it was recognized, and so it never actually took. It never took. I didn't grab that thought. I did grab the one at McDonald's. That's a Fred present moment. So, but there is still a sense of Fred here.
Yes.
And here's the thing, is I must tell you that as much as I fought him for all these years and knew that I needed to dispose of him entirely, I've actually come to like this little character, right? I mean, he's just, he's quite a character. That's all I can say. And that he does what he does, and I don't support everything he does. I don't vote for everything he does, but I notice that he does it no matter what. Right? It's the same thing. And that Fred character has to notice that the universe does whatever it's doing as well. That it's not necessarily paying heed to the Fred unit's wishes. Because it can't. Because the Fred unit wants everything, believes that it is the center of the universe and that everything should be going just like it wants. Right? Yes. But the problem is that there's billions of us that believe that very same thing. And that's what's made the world as sick as it is, as fast as it has, is that it's the only from seeing from that universal view instead of the Fred crack, right? The seeing from that universal view, then I notice that in the absence of Fred, there are no problems.
That's right.
There's just what it is.
And the view is what I have a choice about.
And where you view it from, there's at least that feeling of choice. I say it's a choice because that's how it feels to me, and I can't dispute that.
Right.
But is it actually a choice? I don't see room for it. But I do know that there is something called paradox. And that is the same way that these units can't do anything to help themselves clean up and clear up, and yet I notice that they do consistently.
Yeah.
Is the ones who pursue. And maybe those ideas are coming from the universe. I'm not saying they're not. They can't come from anything else.
Right.
But it's not a matter, but that's philosophy.
Right.
What I'm talking about is how does it feel here?
Right.
It's and the way that it feels here is that I just noticed that if I miss satsang on the weekend a month that we don't do it, that I miss satsang that
right.
weekend. I really do. And I can feel there's a difference.
Right.
There's just is, because the connection that I have with you, apparent others, you're not, but that's what it sure looks to me, right? Yeah. And I can't send myself PayPals. What the hell? What have I accomplished there? So, we're showing up as different. We're showing up as differences. The same thing is showing up in lots and lots of different ways. I'm a gold ring one place and a gold tiara another place and a gold bracelet another.
Right.
But it's all gold.
Just like there's a sense, there's something called surrender that you talk about.
That's right.
And you could philosophize it, but when it's there, you know it.
When it's there, you know it, don't you?
That's right.
Yes. That's the key. You don't give a shit about philosophy at that moment.
Right.
You don't care about philosophy. It's not, you don't want, and I'm simply not, because that philosophy, as helpful as it can be, it is ultimately not freeing.
Right.
It's not the philosophy that frees us. It's recognition and acceptance. That when I'm resisting the present moment, I am resisting my present form.
Right.
I am resisting myself. I'm resisting how I'm showing up. Right. And obviously that is the antithesis of clarity.
Part of the power of satsang for me is it's really beyond all the words and all. It's the tuning fork. It is the tuning vibration of character-free, of that character-free moment.
Yes.
That
yes.
does something. Yeah, I was in a meeting this morning, about 30 people, and I found myself the Joel character, whatever, tuning into not the people. I'm not really listening to people, but I was tuning into the words that came to me, and maybe that's the sense of being. There was the animating force. There's an animating force that's just flowing through every apparent person in this circle. And that's the same thing. And so I was kind of tuning to that. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a sense of being
Oh,
correct?
yeah, that's noticing that commonality instead of the differences.
Right, exactly.
The same thing that we do here is that we concentrate on the commonality, and that's what, satsang again. A definition of it is association with truth.
Right.
That's what we're doing, is we're coming here and we're associating with ourselves here, with our single common self. Self comes here to socialize with self, or to, when I say socialize, you know what I mean, to just be with itself. And it's capital S is both ways. What happens here is, and what you're describing is the same thing that I experienced the same thing in recovery, which is that it's actually what's underneath the words that moves us.
Right.
And it's the same thing that sometimes in private session, we may just talk. We may not necessarily hammer down every last, non-dual theory or anything like that. We may talk about, what's happening in our relative lives, because there is no relative life as opposed to our spiritual life.
Right.
There's just life.
Right.
There's just life.
Right.
And so it's life tuning into itself. It's coming back to that core vibration.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you, Fred. That's very confirming.
Very much.
Experience. Yeah.
John, we have a very good close-up of like your hand, just so you know, and a fork. So John's with us. He gets exactly what we're talking about. He's messing with a fork and he's hearing this, so he's still with us. Actually, Christine was next. Your hand is down now, but you did have it up.
Chris.
Okay. And then she had it up. Is it Chris first?
Yeah, I'm first.
Okay. Go ahead. I won't argue. And Christine, you're next. Okay. Do leave your hand up.
Everyone with the C. C's get to speak now. I had a really interesting, just before the session started, I got an email. And my business is, I'm an astrologer. Mm-hmm. And people ask me specific questions. So rather than looking at their natal chart, I look at specific questions and I can accurately predict that. As amazing as that appears, I can actually make accurate prediction in the dream, so to speak. I can see the dream currents. So this person emailed me and she had two questions. She said, first is, am I going to be able to make money from my business in the next 6 months? And the second question was, if I meditate really seriously, will I wake up and know my true nature? And so she wanted to know what she should do. So the point of the reading
first. Right.
Well, that was most important. And she came back and said, you need to ask the most important question first. And she said that was the money one.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I was like, I just thought that was really interesting. And it'll be very interesting for me to navigate it, because I will be able to tell accurately whether she's going to wake up.
Yeah.
At least within the next 6 months or so.
Yeah.
And but I just was like, of course, my initial reaction is to sort of laugh. It reminds me of that person who asked you about if they woke up, whether it would help with their weight problem.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
But, it's that whole thing about the illusory bodhisattva relieves the illusory suffering of illusory beings.
That's right.
I mean, I can't be like, well, I'm up here. I'm Chris, the enlightened person, and you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So it'll be really interesting to do that. But it's just kind of amazing that here's somebody who knows what it is to wake up, has not an unreasonable method, but they want to know where they're going to make money first. I mean, and if they do, then they're going to do that instead.
Yeah.
At the backup, the true nature thing is kind of a backup.
And it was always my backup, right? I'd like to get rich and famous. If not, I'll go the spiritual route and get rich and famous there, right? I mean, it was always coming back to that. This was not my primary, when I say this, I'm talking about truth was never my primary motive until it was, which was sometime down the road from when I started, I'll tell you that.
What's funny is as I said that, I realized that I'm doing exactly the same thing. Because
very good.
I'm like, you know, I'll sit here and I'll be like, got it. And then I'll be like, out of it, you know, and I'll be saying the same thing. Oh yeah, well, at least I'll feel better or whatever. It's like, what's the benefit to the character?
Yes.
So it's just really, that's funny. That just hit me right.
Yeah.
That there's no need to really be humble, because that's, what's the difference between them and me and their approach? None.
So what you noticed is right there is that there's just one thing going on.
Well, it's the same all over, isn't it?
Yeah, it is the same all over.
You know.
Let me get my ceiling fan just
right.
a second. Thank you.
That it's also the other thing. I was going to flip to another one of those. I had told you when we were talking earlier this week. I found a book on koans that was very interesting because it had the answers.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, what's the sound of one hand clapping? It said the proper answer is the student extends his hand at a 45-degree angle and then holds it up to this angle. And there you go. That's the answer to the koan. And we were both enjoying that a lot too. Because just like you said, it's not the words, it's the underneath.
It's underneath. That's right.
And until you have that experience, then
there's no way they can put an authentic answer to a koan in a book. It's the same way. That's just exactly the same thing as me writing a book and telling you, now here's the truth, right? I may say it, but say something like that. But if I do, hopefully we're all discounting that, right? And we're all have the common understanding that the truth cannot come out of this thing in language at all. Because what I am is beyond language. What you are is beyond language. So language will always pull us away from the truth, but it can point toward the truth at the same time that if we take that language as being the moon instead of the finger, then it is that language that we want so badly to take us to the target is going to pull us away from it.
It's interesting because with this person, it's like it's concrete, it's real. And this Chris's reaction was like, first was like, you know, and then it was like, well, tell her about Fred. And now I'm like, I'm just going to have to see what awareness reacts in the moment to this situation. And it's just going to have to be from a place of openness, and it'll spontaneously come up with the right thing. Right now, I don't know what. I mean, I'm going to do my best. I know that. I'll do my best, and then the proper thing will respond, but I don't have a preset. I don't know how this is. It's fun. That's what I thought. It was really kind of interesting that here we are just before the satsang. Someone's asking me, should I wake up to my true nature? And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And now I'm like, you know what? I have to have the humility to say, I don't know what to do in this situation. Right. I'm just going to be open.
That's right. I don't. Yeah. And I don't even know what this unit should do. So I certainly can't have a clue as to what that unit should do. Right. And I only know what this unit should do after it's already done it. And then I can see, well, that was perfect. Even if it would be judged stupid by everybody else on the planet, God and I would be able to see that, well, that was perfect. You know, I mean, what more could you expect from an idiot, right? I mean, just that's the perfect idiot thing to do. So when we compare, or when we try to compare reality to what we just know should be, we're going to lose every time, because there is no should be other than what is. And I can't even be sure, but it looks to me like that this is what's supposed to be happening, because there's no evidence for anything else to be happening. Now, tell me again how that hand was to be held. Take some,
right.
take some secret notes on that.
Yeah, secret notes on
Yeah,
that.
right.
But I guess what I feel like is that, you know, the one thing that Chris can do is get out of the way.
The one thing that Chris can do is be willing to be moved.
Be willing to be moved even further than that, because he can't even get out of the way. All he can do is be willing to do that. Yeah, exactly.
All you can do. We reach that willingness, and that willingness is the foundation of everything. That's all we can do toward in the direction of surrender. We can become willing to surrender. And the way that I always put that is I can become willing to be other than the way I am. Right? In other words, and that's coming from a unit perspective. But that's what it's going to feel like is surrendering. It's going to feel like, that it's going to be that sense of Fred that will give up on the Fredness directing everything, or trying to. And really all I'm doing is just playing a light on what already is, which is there's no Fred doing this anyway, any of this. There never was. So when I become willing to give up the sense of that we're not, that even though there may still be a sensory experience of Fred, but when I'm willing to give up on believing that's the willingness to, then I can be moved, and I can't be moved until then. That's what nobody wants to do, and when is that nobody wants, same way I didn't, and nobody wants to give the character up. We're just looking for character improvement. Most of the people who will meet with me come to me for dream improvement. That they don't, that will be, at least that will be their take, is that it feels very spiritual to them, and the same way it does for gurus in India, that once they are established as a guru, all of the people come to them, but they want to know, so when should I plant my corn, right? I mean, it's just, it moves from the sublime to the mundane, because we can't not do that. We're hooked up for that, but there's nothing about that that's true. Go ahead.
If I could.
Welcome aboard.
Oh, you've done it to me again. Oh.
Christine, we're going to leave Chris for now. We'll come back if Chris has more things that must be shared.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. Your trip to China was safe, and
yeah, it's safe. Physically, mentally, there are so many things going on. I want to say this, even though last time I missed one because I was in China, it was a different time frame, and the one I had before I left was very helpful to me. I got information, got a text message, my dad passed away. And then I left immediately. There were so many things going on, and when Kathleen said something, there's nothing but only this, and really helped me many moments. So I was able to just focus on whatever in front of me, because there's just a million things, and there's some of them it seems very ridiculous. For example, they would ask me, there's certain documents I had to do. My dad passed away at 85, and they asked me where I need to prove my grandparents from my mom's side and grandparents from my dad's side, their death certificate, if they're dead or not. So I talked to them, I said, you know, they must have to be like 120. Do you think?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I was able to kind of laugh at it, and instead of get frustrated. And there was a list of long list of things. There's many moments I could be very feel like I couldn't do anything, or I couldn't get help. And instead, I really I guess that I was pretty calm to finish whatever the task they asked me to do, get things done. And I was actually proud of myself in a way. And I thought that this is very helpful. But then when I got home, the issues with my neighbors, I'm building a new home, and then the neighbors are not happy with it. The neighbor actually was like, we live in the area, it's very high density, so the neighbor was like 3 feet away. So I found out I immediately dropped into this trap. My mind just gave me a lot of terrible images, what she could do. And the things, at least people told us she poured the water into our foundation before pour the concrete, so we couldn't pour the concrete. So they delayed. And then I might start getting like she would sabotage the whole construction. And anyway, it just, and I will try to find this calmness. This is like, there's only this, nothing but this. But I'll still fight with this, right? I don't want this. Yesterday my husband told me, he said, you know, you have to realize not everyone loves us. But obviously I want to be like, I tried very nice with her, try to invite her out for lunch or dinner, try to talk through, but she just send the registered mail to us and try to get into the lawsuit or something. I feel like scared. But a few minutes ago, listen to everyone's question and your answer. I realized I think it is true. I still try to get how this thing will benefit Christine. How can't Christine feel, I mean, I guess how I cannot feel fear. This is what I was looking for.
So Chris, yeah, because and just notice something is that Christine will never be fearless. Only awakeness is fearless. So whenever there's fear or any kind of negative emotion that we think we shouldn't be here because it's not good for the unit, then just notice that that this is what is. You don't actually know. I can guarantee you right now. Can you tell me that you know that your neighbor? Well, just so you know, first off, you and your neighbor both love each other. You just don't know it yet. But the second thing is that do you actually know that your neighbor doing what she's doing, it will ultimately be bad for you? Do you know that that's really bad, or could it possibly be a good thing in disguise?
I don't know. I don't know. I was thinking about it maybe 20 years later, or I don't know, 20 years, maybe 10 years, 5 years later, maybe that will be a story about the building the house as some kind of interesting event going on. I don't know. I don't know if...
What I've noticed is, the reason I bring that up is that, and it's okay for Christine to resist the neighbor because she can't not, but that doesn't affect you. But I can tell you that on a relative level, I noticed that the worst things that have ever happened to me, and there have been some rough ones, but I noticed that the worst things that have ever happened to me have ended up being the greatest gifts I ever received. And that is just, it is crazy. It doesn't make any sense. It's hard for me to even cough those words out in a way, but it's absolutely true. If I had not lived in a park, I wouldn't be in this room with you here today. If I had not gone to jail, I would not be in this room with you here today. If I had not been poverty stricken, if I had not been anything. See, that like the physical pain that I have now, it's I need that. I have no idea why, right? I just know that if I didn't need it, I wouldn't have it. So apparently what all of these things do is they keep me focused on this. And so that, and I need a constant reminder, because Fredness on its own doesn't come to this room, right? It just doesn't. It doesn't come to this room, and it's not particularly useful other than as a bad example. So we're going completely against the grain. It's just like a trick that, you know, God's just trying to pull off to make this into a reasonable unit, right? And to make it into a spiritual teacher and all of that. We're just going completely against the grain. So I need these constant reminders, but it doesn't mean I want them. It doesn't mean that they're, because these things, I promise you, my elbows do not fall into in line with my preferences, with the unit's preferences. It just doesn't. But I know that it's absolutely necessary. Is it actually, and now here's the funny thing, I can't actually tell you that it's necessary for Fredness. See, I can tell a story about that I need these constant reminders and everything, and that's true. It does feel like that. Do I know that that's true? No. What I do know that's true is that whatever it is that's happening here, it is necessary for the whole. And if I recognize that I am the whole, then I cease to be so concerned with what happens here, right? It's just like Ramakrishna, the Indian saint, used to say, you know, they would, when he was dying, and they said, please eat, 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 eat. And he checked, and he used to call divinity the mother. And he checked, he said, I'll check with mother and let you know. And so he went into a kind of samadhi thing and came back out, and he said, no, she says that I'm eating plenty through all the other mouths. So in other words, she's telling this one, it's fine for that one to die because it doesn't affect anything. It's just, you know, it's just like me watching a flower wilt and saying, now this is wrong. This is before its time. There's no such thing as before its time. There's just, it's doing what it's doing. And I can just look at that doing what it's doing and not judge it, not decide, make decisions around it. And what was it? Someone said earlier that the grass grows by itself. The grass does grow by itself. It doesn't actually need my input, unless it does, at which point I throw seed on the lawn. Whatever it is, but that's just happening. That's not my input. But it'll feel like that's neither my input as Fredness, nor is it my input as awakeness. It's just what's happening. But it will feel like that it will be Fred doing it, and then Fred will ratchet that up and say, no, it's just oneness, and then noneness can say, no, it's neither one of them. I mean, just, the truth is not in this world. The truth is not even about this world. But the closest thing to the truth, which is manifestation, we can't say manifestation is untrue. We just can't say that it's the end all be all. But the truth is not going to be found here. And whether a Fred or a Christine is happy today will make absolutely no difference in tomorrow, because there'll be new challenges tomorrow. This arising will have taken a whole new form. And thank God, I finally got that neighbor off my back. And here come these damn inspectors. I can't believe it. Right? It's just, you cannot go at this trying to push away or cure the symptoms. You have to go after the thing itself, and the thing itself is always the same thing. It's identification. It's misidentification. Because these things, because this awakening that you've experienced, it's not about Christine. It's not for Christine, not against Christine. There's no Christine. But it is now, and the unit will very likely benefit from it. But that's a side effect. It's not designed specifically. Designed doesn't happen specifically for the benefit of the experiencing unit. It's this. When I build my house, my hammer doesn't get really excited. It's not, it's just not about the hammer. It's about the house, and that it's not about the tool. And this is a tool. It's just a tool. I mean, it's a great tool. Don't get me wrong. I'm very fond of this one, but it's still just a tool. As I give up the need to satisfy this one, and Fred will never give up the need to satisfy Fred. That is just not happening. We are hardwired for that, and there's no reason we shouldn't be. But what we can do is as we get clearer and clearer, we can begin to notice patterns. And when conscious awakeness is present, then a miracle occurs, which is that we actually begin to notice patterns that are not in our benefit. In other words, that do not serve the unit, that do not serve the whole, that simply feel right? I can't pretend that there's no sense of judgment at all. There will be. But we can just say skillful and unskillful, because that's not quite so, that doesn't take a position of good or bad. It's still judgmental. It still comes from a center, but you and I are talking, and we got to use the language the best we can. If I can recognize that actually that I am not a Fred experiencing the world. The thing that's closer to the truth than that is that I am the world experiencing a Fred. And only when I think I am Fred am I fearful. Because I think I know what should happen in Fred's life, just like you do. In the sense that, your neighbor should lay on. And I'm not, though I'm not voting for your neighbor doing this, I just noticed she's doing it anyway. She's doing it regardless of my wishes. So, but there is the sense, and I get it completely, that my neighbor ought not to be doing this. This is not, this is not right. And I can believe all of that exactly as long as I want to suffer. But I can come to, even if it starts out intellectually, you got to start somewhere, and we used intellect to go beyond the intellect. Start somewhere and say, It's certainly, and be candid with yourself. Tell yourself the truth. It feels like my neighbor ought not to be doing like this. That's the way it feels, right? When I was in jail, it felt like, well, what's a nice guy like me doing in a place like this, right? It's this is wrong, but actually it wasn't, not for the whole, and it wasn't even wrong for the unit. If it had not been miserable for the unit, then I would not have been required to surrender. And in the absence of surrender, then everything goes the same way it always did, which is just horrid for you and me. It's not a skillful unit left to its own devices. If I can recognize that I am the world experiencing a Christine, then I can see that that Christine counts, or that unit, the Christine character. Fine, all that counts. I'm not saying it doesn't count. I'm saying it doesn't matter, but it does count, and it can feel important. And it is important because it's my experiences. Awakeness is experiencing itself as a Christine. So we don't want to just reject awakeness's experience out of hand. But we intellectually have to begin to accept the fact, really notice it, and really begin to accept the fact. I don't know what's good for me. And I can say that as awakeness, I can say that as Fredness, whatever. I mean, I don't know what's bad for me as awakeness. There just is this. And I have one job in this life as the sense of an independent unit. I have one job, and only one job. And that job is to try to get on board with what is. That when what is what ising, I need to try to figure out a way to get on board with that, only because I'll suffer if I don't. That's even if it's selfish motivation, it will lead to unselfishness. So I don't really care what anybody's motivation is. It's not because there's no one there that's not your motivation, just what's happening through you. And so what's happening through your neighbor? There's no neighbor there either. It's an empty unit. And if you will look at it as the mechanical thing that it is, it can't not do what it's doing. It's not even doing this against you. It's doing for itself. And because it's operating from a certain belief system. And I know it's false, and you know it's false, but she doesn't know it's false. That unit is doing the very best that it can to get through the world, but it's operating from a center. And no matter which way it goes, it's just a matter of how much destruction am I going to do? How much chaos am I going to create? I can be Mother Teresa, but if I'm not aware, or someone just like Mother Teresa without an awareness of divinity, and I'm going to end up with just a mess. So, but guess what? It's a divine mess even then. So I wore that out, but I apparently felt the need there. So those words have now been shared. Carter, how can I help you, sir? Thank you very much, Christine.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Good.
You've already helped me.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, just the answer from Christine of that sense of oneness. But I've had, I don't know, things have been popping. I don't know, the sense of a meditation on freedom, and the fact that freedom I can never find out there. I can only find in here. And love I can never find out there. I can only find out here. But I'm still laughing at, I think, Byron Katie running out into the desert, which I've done myself, and realizing I'm inhabiting a crazy person.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. I'm at the mercy of a crazy person. God.
Right. But there's something else I just heard recently that really, I don't know, helped me, and it was about a Nobel Prize winner. And I always felt, because my father was a great admiral and my uncle was a great ambassador, that I should be a great scientist and I should get my PhD and get the Nobel Prize. And then I'd be loved and happy and joyous and everything would be wonderful and I'd be truly loved in a world. And a Nobel Prize winner said, you know, this is a guy that won the Nobel Prize, said, the Nobel Prize was the consolation prize for not getting the love I wanted.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Consolation prize.
That's right. But it still wasn't love.
It's another thing. It's another thing. Yeah. You ended up in the park, but some people end up with $100 million and they still don't have that sense of happiness.
I know some of them.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but I do know some.
I and the love part of it, which you only talk about, I don't know. I was reading a lady named Jan Fraser that had a sudden awakening and fear. She said that fear had dropped away and she realized that fear had been inhabiting her life constantly. And when it sort of disappeared, it was filled with love.
Because it was just covering up the love.
Yeah.
That's all. It wasn't.
Love just appeared.
Because it can't not. Same thing as the truth. The book of undoing, unknowing, and unveiling is that the truth is always here. If we just pull away the crap that we put on top of it, then the truth shows up by itself. It can't not. It's the foundation of everything. But when but our thoughts and beliefs and assumptions and opinions and all that, we just dice that out onto, slice it and dice it and throw it on top of the truth, and we can't see it. Right? It's that ours becomes an entirely conceptual experience, and I'm not conceptual.
That's like, I did go out into the desert one time. I was getting really antsy and I went out into the desert to just get silence.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found out in the desert was, instead of silence, was this ringing in my ear that I'd never heard in the city, and was horrified and came back in. But now through your teachings and other non-dual teachings, I've found the silence.
Yeah.
It's a little like finding the love.
Yeah, because it's what I notice about what you are is, we could say that you are space-like. You're not space or time, but you're space-like. And what we can notice is that this spaciousness that you are is already still.
Yeah.
Already silent. The qualities of space, this spaciousness, are already silence and stillness. And I am silence and I am stillness, but I am steady looking for silence and stillness, because I have heard that there is some experience other than this one. When, as Kathleen says, if they're just this, it's hard for me to find an experience other than this, whatever it is, this experience that I'm having at the moment. It's actually impossible for me to find some experience other than this one. But this one, I can promise you I didn't sign up for this one, right? I didn't. I signed up for a much more explosive and an entertaining and illuminating, with constant and orgasmic too. Don't forget that.
Hey.
And, that's what I signed up for, and this is what I got. And it takes time before it can be realized through the concepts that the unit clings to. It takes time before we realize that this is better than that ever dreamed of, right? That this, because it's now, I don't need extraordinary experience. Ordinary experience works for me. It's just, wow, you mean, oh yeah. And it's Betsy's always saying, it's the little things And she's right. It's because all the wonderful little things, the little mundane little things that occur in life, that they're really not mundane at all. It's all divine. And I don't need to find divinity. I just need to admit to it.
Wow. Just, you're talking about Kathleen and what you just talked about to Kathleen. I mean Christine, not Kathleen, Christine. My wife is coming home. She's been away for 3 weeks, and she's in a lot of physical pain and is disabled in many ways and has some sores and has a lot of demands on my precious time. And she's been away for 3 weeks at a health place, and she's coming back this afternoon. And there's a part of me that really is like, oh shit, you know, it's all this. I love her very much, and we have had orgasms on top of mountaintops and in tropical pills and incredible experiences everywhere. But now, you know, with this old age shit, you know, it's like, Jesus Christ, you know, this is not what I signed up for.
Right.
Where's the walking off into the sunset, you know, those happy gray-haired people, you know, on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, underlying that, you remind me, underlying that is the silence, is the love, is the peace.
And that's what you feel. That's the resonance that we all feel when we come here. Is that we when we come here, we accept our own divinity through all of these. We accept our own divinity, and sometimes it's more easily accepted through others. It's more admitted to others, and you can hear divinity speak. It's not always speaking from this chair. There's a whole lot of teachers in here, and there's a room full of them, which is wonderful, because this teaching has no teacher other than the one who's presently, whoever that is.
Sometimes divinity speaks through the judge that says you got to go to jail.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and whoever wants to look back on that and say you're right. God, I do need to go to jail. Better not go too easy on me. I won't work out. I'll just be a mess. I mean, God Almighty. More, Carter?
No, I think I'm complete. Yes, the silence is here. That just brought me back to running out into the desert looking for the silence, and finally I get out in the middle of fucking nowhere, and the sun is just starting to rise in the beautiful, spacious desert, and there's not silence, there's this ringing in my ears.
Yeah, if it just wasn't for this ringing, I'd be all right.
That's right. I came hightailing back into town, talking to doctors and whatever, and then I had to talk to Dr. Fred Ness.
Yeah, exactly. The doctor is in. I'm not a doctor, but I play one on the internet.
You're going to give me that place. Oh, yes, that's the answer to the koan. I love that.
That's it. That's right. Yes. My son.
What was it now? It was like...
Go forth and sin no more.
Okay, thanks, Fred.
Thank you very much, Carter. Always a pleasure. Kathleen, hello, dear.
Yes. Hi, Fred, and hi, everybody. And Christine, condolences on your father. You got me thinking. I deal with chronic pain, and I'm often telling myself, you know, this is what is, and it's perfect. And one way to convince myself of that is I, you know, list all the benefits the unit gets out of it. And there's been a lot. I mean, it certainly keeps me enthused about staying awake and staying clear. And it's really deconstructed the ego which is also helpful for clarity. But I've lost a lot of my identity. I kind of had to go through the shame, and I dropped that recently, and I'm like, oh, I carried that all my life. Like I had to have a certain image or be a certain person, and with these health problems, I can't. So I was feeling really bad about that. So I just dropped it. It's like, oh, I'm kind of glad I lived to drop that, because that was something I didn't even know I had. So, I mean, it's teaching me wonderful things. And I do have faith that it's for the, best for the unit. But the unit still would rather not have it.
Yeah.
And but I really liked what you just said. What reminded me of another thought I'd had is it's necessary for all of reality. And I'd been telling myself that a couple days ago. It's like my physical pain is holding the entire universe together, which gives it like a real epic importance, and makes me feel like, oh, wow, I really have to do this, because everything's absolutely interrelated. So if I could just lift this pain away, then the whole universe would implode. And of course, that would be terrible. So it's just a good way to look at it. It's like, oh yeah, and that doesn't mean it won't ever go away, because that would mean that's what the universe needs. But it's very helpful to see it's not just about me. It's like I have to hold this space for oneness and endure these trials, because without it, none of you would be here. Nothing would be right. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, we have to remember that when we're seeing, oh, I'm getting some back, so I'm gonna mute you. Yeah, that's where it was. So we have to be willing to admit that we don't know. We just don't know. What is it that we don't know? We don't even know that. We just don't know. We live when I live in the great unknowing, I notice I don't have any great complaints. But once I know how things should be and that this isn't it, and it's always going to be that way for the unit. I mean, you'll get a unit that is more or less acquiescent, but I think this one, and I think yours probably too, from what I've heard. There's just enough rebel there, that, I mean, I was always known to be a guy who would cut his nose off to spite his face. And so there's always going to be that initial rebellion to this, whatever this is, right? And on the waterfront, and they no, it wasn't on the waterfront. It was a different movie that. Something about I forgot when Marlon Brando, and he was was a motorcycle bad boy, and they said what are you resisting? And he said, what do you got? And that's kind of the way I always was, right? He said, what do you got? I resist that because I can't think of anything myself, but if you can, I'd be helpful. So although there may always be resistance here, and I'm not trying to override that. Trying to override the resistance that's always the first move, and it's always the poorest. I don't want to override that. I want to undermine it. I want to undermine it with doubt, because I know that this is something. Is that true? Do you really, really, really know that? Do you know that you know that? No. There's the doubt. That seed of doubt is the seed of the other extreme. And it's the seed of movement. It's the seed of seeing that this thing is never ceasing. And that whatever position I have within that at this moment, whichever experience, whatever it is that Fredness is experiencing at this moment, is exactly what's needed for the whole. And even though that's an intellectual position, it's still a way to, but it's still a comfort. But if you maintain that as an intellectual position, it will change. It will move beyond an intellectual position, and it will just be where that a Fred present moment is a rarity. Yeah, that's the honest to God truth. It just is. There's a background of Fredness here always, but that's not the same thing as a Fred present moment, because a Fred present moment is a running argument with what is. Because I know so much better. But when I don't know, I feel so much better. Mike.
Hey, I wanted to thank all my selves for my kindness.
Yeah.
Just like with Kathleen saying, I noticed the difference between it's not just about me as opposed to how that can be inverted, like in the recovery rooms. It's not just about you, it's not just about me, and it's kind of a shaming thing. It's about, no, it's a relief. It's not just about this me. It's like, what a difference. And it reminds me of Julie's drawing of, or let me back that up. I heard something about, the me is this conceptual box around, dividing infinity, like Julie's picture that she's shown us. And unconsciously was focusing on this me is the same as depriving myself of oxygen by knowing that I am all me. So unconsciously, if you have that box, it's going to start to deprive, the oxygen is going to be depleted with all this thinking about just this me. It's all this me. But yeah, so when you were talking to Alvaro, the kindness of what you were saying. And I also wanted to add for me, there's a little bit of a fear and a panic in even asking the question in the first place. It's like I'm preparing myself to what am I going to do about that panic or that fear that might be coming, and so just kind of marveling at the kindness that's willing to ask, willing to answer. And it's just so important because I had a moment of clarity once about the fourth step of AA, that is, make this list, you've got this, all these questions, all these possibilities that, there's obviously the kindness of AA that allows for getting out of one part of the self to make that list. But when they say that, thoroughness is so important, I realized that part of thoroughness, but primary in thoroughness, what is included in thoroughness is kindness. So if you're at a place where you don't need to make that list, or like in your recovery book, one page where you realize, you're the number one bad opinion about yourself, don't be making a list about a bunch of worse opinions, like what Chris was pointing out, which was great. I had that experience too. I'm seeing this in the other person, and it seems like I really, that person talks a lot. That's really ego, how much ego there is, and I'm recognizing gosh, what do I do about the fact that I'm seeing that ego? Isn't that I'm seeing ego in myself, right? But that some kind of clarity there, which I know is not clarity, because it's a harshness of clarity. There's a bad opinion unit here. There's that runs along. That's what's running. That's always going to be running around here. So I have to have this kindness to this bad opinion self unit experiencing going on here.
Yes.
That it's just a very interesting experience. So I want to bring it back again to it's the kindness is part of thoroughness. I'm so glad you guys are helping me see it, so thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, we can sometimes get this reverse thing going on, which is that, I'm not, what I always like to think is that I'm the best, right? I'm just the best, I'm the best. But when I don't think I'm the best, I believe I'm the worst. I'm just but I'm still special on the other end of the spectrum. I'm never just some guy who's plugging his way through life one step at a time, right? That just because I'm bumping my way through the world. That's the truth. That's how I learn. Is that this unit just bumps its way. It bumps its way left. It bumps its way right. And it's doing the very best that it can. It's neither the best nor the worst. It's one of. And that's maybe the toughest position to take, just one of. You know, when I watch this thing, once in a while I'll put it on speaker view, but I usually put this on the whatever they call it, the viewer where all the little squares. And because I don't like for this one because otherwise if I say something, then I get really big in front of my face, and and I might think that I have something to say, right? Or that there's some sort of specialness that may fall out of it or something. And it's much better for me to remain one of, right? Just one of. That's it. I'm not. It's not a better than. It's not a worse than. I'm not better or worse than Christine's neighbor. I am Christine's neighbor. And I am doing the best that I can, but I'm awfully limited because I'm over here and I'm snoring. Yeah. Just not just got my eyes closed, but I'm actually snoring. And I'm so deeply unconscious. And when we look around the world, that is the typical situation. These people are not, it's the same reason that that you can't give this away to most people, right? But those of us for whom this is precious, it's the most precious thing in the world. But if you're not one of those who believe this is the most precious thing in the world, then it's just malarkey, right? I don't care a thing. Or they're just nuts. I don't know. Even my doctor who engaged me, right, about truth, and one of my orthopedists engaged me to find out about truth or whatever. But when he went to the website and he said, "Oh, that's really cool. You got your own little cult, don't you?" Yes, that's it. Yes, we have a cult here. And, it's just, he just doesn't, because he couldn't get it. He just couldn't. He couldn't, and my sense is that he didn't see the value in it, but he could smell the value. That's the reason he engaged me as much as he did. He could smell there was something there, but there was also the stench of eradication. And who moves into that welcomely with welcome arms? Nobody. I didn't. I shouldn't expect my doctor to. My doctor suffers enough. He'll be ringing me. He'll be ringing me. He knows of this. There's a saying, and I think it's true, that once you have heard of enlightenment, you're pretty well doomed, right? That thing will eat you up from there. I don't, if I catch the flu, it's not because I ate a turkey or a tomato or whatever. It's because I got one tiny little germ, and it just ate me up alive. It's really so wonderful to be here with you. Thank all of you so much for the gift of allowing us to have this time together. There's nothing in my life that is more meaningful than this. I love you. And next week is staycation, so there will be no satsang next week. So I'll see you in 2 weeks. And it is, and if I got that wrong, I'll announce it, but I don't think I have it wrong. Oh, you can always look at the website and find out exactly when satsang is. I think, Matt, if you look at the little calendar on the thing, I think I've got it mapped out for the next couple of months. So you could do. Thank you, everybody. I love you. Bye-bye.